If I was to ask you, do you want the good news first or the bad news? You'd probably say the bad news because, you want to get to something good. You want the good to be the main bit. Well, I'm going to honour that and I'm going to tell you the bad news first, although it isn't really bad news because, well, it's not news, is it? Because you would have already seen it online, but the news is my reaction. And the news that I'm talking about is Ake leaving to go to Fenerbahce. Now, this was released by Fenerbahce on their social media pages, which, to be honest, in recent years, with the likes of Fabrizio Romano, even David Ornstein, stuff like that, it's become a lot less common that we don't really hear a lot about this sort of stuff until it actually happens. So it was a bit refreshing, but also sad at the same time because we are seeing a very underrated player for our club leave. Another one of the treble winners gone, which I saw before. There's been quite a lot of posts on it, obviously. I think that leaves 3 of them now, with obviously Grealish as well, but it looks pretty certain that he's gone as well, doesn't it? Obviously, he joined in the 2020-21 season just after he was with Bournemouth, where they'd just gone down. And I remember at the time, I think we bought him for like 40 or 50 million, and everyone was like, fucking hell, you've just bought someone for 40 mil from the Championship. That's crazy. What the fuck are you doing? And yeah, Spurs have just spent 85 mil on someone from the fucking Championship, so let's fucking hear it now, mate. Probably struggled to fit in properly into the starting 11 as a kind of staple in his first few seasons. Obviously, when he initially came in, he was probably expected to come in straight away and start, but then not too long after, Ruben Diaz came in, and then he formed a partnership with John Stones, so made it kind of hard for Ake to really get in there. And obviously, we had Cancelo, our left back, who, funnily enough, was obviously great for us for a couple of seasons, and then had that little scuffle with Pep, which meant he left, which is the reason really why Ake came in at left back, which was probably the best he played that treble season. He was impeccable. And as I said before, he's underrated. I actually don't think he's underrated, particularly by City fans that have obviously watched him now and obviously remember what he's done for us. But I think in years to come, even for the fans that have watched him, we probably won't be, putting him up in the kind of respects that we are with other people. But yeah, 100% deserves his flowers. I mean, I know the treble season was probably the one season where he really, really cemented his place and was incredible throughout that. He has had his injury problems, which has unfortunately been some of the reasons for quite a lot of our centre-backs in particular not being able to shine properly throughout the whole time. At the club, we've seen it kind of with Laporte, with Stones, even though they were obviously great when they were playing. We could have seen even more of that. And that's kind of the same with Ake. No, he's going to watch this video, but if you are, mate, Nathan, respect, brother. You'll always be welcome back to the Etihad, mate, even though, I'm not the one who authorises all of that, so you'll have to talk to Sheikh Mansour or Khaldoon, probably Khaldoon, because Sheikh Mansour's been to the stadium like once. The only thing I would say makes the transfer even a bit more upsetting is that we also got reports that apparently it's a £7 million fee that he's going for. Now, yes, he is 31, which is quite old. Yes, he hasn't had a shitload of game time in recent years, and yes, he is quite injury prone. But £7 million in this market, come on, we could have got more than that. Seriously, what the fuck are we doing? You could have at least got 15 to 20 mil. I actually came across this post on Twitter and I replied to it with my gratitude for Nathan, because we're boys. And I had a Fenerbahce fan reply to my comment asking, what can they expect from him? So, just in case there is any Fenerbahce fans out there, yes, he hasn't had a lot of game time, as I said, in recent seasons, but he's shown that when called upon, he can still be very, very good. And obviously, you would expect Fenerbahce is going to get a lot more game time. And to be honest, this season, it wasn't really to do with his injuries that he wasn't being picked. It was just that we've got very good defenders and they're all younger. Like, even Ruben Diaz, someone that you view as old, still younger, 2 years younger than Nathan Ake. Just from this season, we don't even have to go back far enough to the treble season. Just this season gone, he was pretty much called up last minute to play in the cup final against Arsenal, who were at the time 9 points clear. Obviously, now we know they've won the league as well. But he came in that game, Gahey signed, but he couldn't play. Diaz was injured, Gvardiol was injured. He came in, he stepped up, and he was very good in that game. So that shows you how just good he can be. So, Fenerbahce fans, if you can keep him fit and you keep him in the team, that's the sort of thing he can produce. So, you have got a good player on your hands. Moving on to the more good news is that we haven't had any announcement, but we also haven't had an official announcement from the club for Elliot Anderson. And did a whole video on that, so we'll run with it. But we have had the here we go, which is essentially gospel now anyway. Jeremy Monga, who signed from Leicester for £10 million. I was just talking about Ake leaving for £7 million in this market. Jeremy Monga is 16 years of age and we just spent 10 mil, and we bought him from a team that's just got relegated to League One. Yeah. But let's be real, we just spent 116 mil on Anderson, so yes, 10 mil for a 16-year-old is probably, too much, but do we really give a shit? We just spent 116 mil, like 10 mil to us as a club is nothing, and at the end of the day, it's not my fucking money. And I did a little bit of a thing at the end of the Anderson video saying, what? We've got no pull. We just signed an England international and named all the names that we signed in the past before Pep to prove that Pep was not the only pull for players coming to Man City. And we've just signed number one youth talent in the world, Jeremy Monga. Arsenal wanted him. Well, guess what, mate? There's a fucking food chain here, and the biggest club in the fucking world have just fucking gone and got him. So, shush, hold that. Get mugged by this fat double chin. In previous years, signing a 16-year-old kind of a bit out the blue, I would say he's just going to probably come in and end up going on loan somewhere. That might well still happen, but there's also been reports that we're bringing Piers Charles, we're calling him back from his loan from Sheffield Wednesday. So, obviously, new manager, Maresca. I was kind of unsure whether it was just a case of young players was all he really had at his other clubs, so whether I'm just making that out to be, he's actually using young players more than probably what Pep did, or whether that was just the fact that he actually just had more young players at his other clubs. But there is a lot of signs in these sort of, calling people back from loan, getting youngsters in, that actually maybe Maresca wants to work with more younger players and actually use them a lot more. And I'm not saying Pep never used young players. Obviously, Nico O'Reilly came through the academy. He's just had a very good season. Phil Foden obviously came through under Pep, but hasn't really worked out for him. But Rico Lewis also. Not to say that Pep never used them, but they're showing more signs that maybe actually Maresca will use quite a few of them more frequently than we've seen under Pep. And it has also been stated that Maresca likes to work with a bigger squad, especially in comparison to what Pep used to like to work with. So maybe that's just a part of it. Maybe more rotation and stuff, or just keeping the young players close to the more experienced players to make them better suited for in the future, as opposed to sending them off on loan to some League One or whatever team. I had also seen reports though that actually Maresca wanted to be just a coach and didn't want to get involved in all the transfers and stuff. But then stuff like this comes about, and I'm seeing Monga sign him basically because Maresca knew a lot about him when he was at Leicester, and he was in the youth system at Leicester when Maresca was managing the first team. And that just makes me go, well, you're telling me he's not bothered in all the transfers, but then you're telling me we're signing people and we're getting rumoured to people just because of the Maresca links. I'm not really sure about that. Don't get me wrong, I don't mind him coming in and just being the coach and not getting involved in all that if that was the case, because I don't think we can just go, yeah, Maresca, you want these people, yeah, we'll give them to you straight away. Because with Pep, yes, we did that, and we won what we won, but with Pep, no disrespect, I know Maresca's won stuff, but Pep had a proper back catalogue of actually knowing that if you give him what he wants, he can achieve pretty much what we did. Which I think with the task Maresca's got ahead of him, if you just kind of say yes to him on pretty much everything straight away, then the minute it kind of goes bad, then you might start to think of getting rid of him. Then you've got to take that into account, because then, as much as it could, if it goes very well, end up in a situation like it was with Pep, it could also end very bad and end up in a situation like Man United where with Ten Hag, where they just got all of his players that the next manager doesn't want, and then you've got to get rid of all those players before you get the new players in, and then it just becomes a big thing. I brought up Pierce Charles being recalled back from Sheffield Wednesday, or at least looking like he's going to be. This for me, along with obviously links of clubs looking at him, seems to me like Trafford is on his way out the door. Now, there was a lot of conversation, particularly towards the end of last season after Trafford had his performance, very good performance, in the cup final, over whether potentially he should be the starting number one over Donnarumma, because obviously that's what initially Trafford was basically looked like he was getting brought in for, only to then a couple of weeks later we bring in Donnarumma. Now, I think it was quite obvious that it seemed like a choice had to be made between which one of them is it going to be, because the other one's going, because, you know, they're just too high quality to not be starting week in, week out. And I know nothing officially has happened yet. We haven't actually even had reports that an offer's coming for either of them, but in terms of links, rumours, whatnot, there seems to be a lot more links to Trafford's name, and I haven't actually seen basically anything linked to Donnarumma's name, so I mean, that pretty much says it. And again, like I said with Monga, whether Pierce Charles coming back is kind of for him to be integrated into the squad straight away, or whether it's to send him off on loan to somewhere a bit different, I don't know. I watched them in a game a couple of weeks ago where they played against France, but Pierce Charles was starting for Northern Ireland. Now, no disrespect to Northern Ireland, I know they're not a huge country, but if you're getting a fella who, and I know they were in the Championship, but they're practically in League One because of the points deduction, who's starting for Northern Ireland. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't know if he starts all the time for Northern Ireland, but he has started for his national team. Then I think he's a good player to have as a backup. Whether you go for someone more experienced still as a backup, I don't know. It shows promise that potentially he could be the starter in a couple of years. And unlike Trafford, he hasn't actually hit his prime years yet, so there's potentially more leeway with Charles that he'll stay as a backup for a couple of years. And then Donnarumma will be old enough where he goes on a leave and then Charles comes in. Could be happening. And I talked about the good and the bad news at the start of the video. Well, you've heard about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm going to refurbish that in this video to the bad, the good, and the maybe, because we've gone from the bad news with Ake leaving, the good news with Monga joining the squad, and now we're moving on to someone that is potentially coming in. It is a rumour, but you may have seen this in the past couple of days. Apparently, Real Madrid have offered us Eduardo Camavinga. Now, first of all, just on Camavinga as a player, I think when I've seen him, he's been pretty decent. Obviously, I haven't watched a lot of him, I'm not going to lie, but, you know, Champions League and stuff. He seems like a decent player, and if we were just going in for him naturally, then I'd probably have a lot less kind of, you know, queries on it. Don't get me wrong, I'd probably still be debating a little bit given the fact that we've just signed Anderson, but you know, I wouldn't be against it now. Not to say that I'm totally against it if these reports are true anyway, but to me it kind of seems like Real Madrid a little boying us a bit. Now obviously we know the Rodri and Real Madrid links are kind of heavy. Rodri will be coming to his contract at the end of the season, and to me, not necessarily with our club, but we have seen this situation not too far in the distant past with Real Madrid and another club with Trent at Liverpool. Trent was coming up to the end of his contract at the 24-25 season. Real Madrid, I think it was about halfway through the season, put a little offer in. Obviously, Trent would have been valued a lot more than this if it weren't for the contract situation, but they said it's 25 mil. Obviously, Liverpool said no because, you know, that's not what he's worth. So then obviously Real Madrid went, all right then, we were being nice. We said 25 mil, so you get something from it. And he ends up leaving for free. I mean, technically they got, I think it was 10 mil because, you know, they wanted to get Merley because of the Club World Cup. But yeah, if the same situation happens, well, we're not getting fucking 10 mil, are we? Because there is no fucking Club World Cup at the end of this season. And it definitely seems like that could be a possibility when we have already offered Rodri a contract and he still hasn't signed, and I'm pretty sure that was at least a few months ago where we offered it to him. So yeah, and the thing that gets me a bit more worried about it isn't even just the fact that they've offered us Camavinga for Rodri, which is like, yeah, we're getting Rodri, you can have him, you know, it's the same position, so you know, you're getting a proper replacement. But are we getting a proper replacement? Now, like I said, when I've watched him personally, he's been good, but Real Madrid are obviously watching him week in, week out, every single game. Do they know something that we don't? Because Tuchemeni, now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying anything is wrong with Tuchemeni as a player, but Tuchemeni plays a similar position and he got into a little bit of a bust up. Surely you would want to try and get someone who's had that big of a thing going on out the club. You know, obviously Real Madrid aren't going to offer us fucking Mbappe, you know, just so they get Rodri. Like, no one's fucking doing that. And yeah, they still offered us Camavinga. So are they basically trying to tell us that Camavinga isn't that good? To the point where they'd actually rather keep someone that had that big of a thing going on and would have that many questions raised, along with Valverde, obviously, was the other person involved in that, when they come back for club duty, as opposed to keeping Camavinga. Yeah, I'm unsure on that one. What do you think? Big ups to Ake. Proper defender. We love you, Nathan. Monga's joined. Camavinga potentially coming in. What do we think about all that? Leave it in the comments. So yeah, if you want to see more sort of this stuff, to be honest with you, when I made the Anderson thing last week, I was like, oh, that's big news, I'll just talk about that. Wasn't really expecting to come back on here and talk pretty much the week after about more news. Obviously, we know transfer stuff happens all the time, but yeah, I don't know if I'll be making one of these every week, but if you do want to see more of this kind of transfer talk and stuff, or just me talking more on City, then leave it in the comments.